Welcome to BW Businessworld, to the Gurugram chapter of the Indian Business Literature Festival, where business meets wisdom. Today I have with me Mr. S.V. Nathan, who is the partner and Chief Talent Officer of Deloitte, and also the author of today's book, Heart of Work. Thank you so much for joining me today, Mr. Nathan. First of all, I would like you to tell our audience, in your own words, what is this book about?
First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and speaking to you. The book is really about two things. One is, all we do in a day's work is work, but there's a lot of heart in it. And how happy a place it would be if you could take a lot of that heart and put that in your work. So we all have stories. This whole book is about 70 odd stories. All of them, they're not pedantic, they're not prosaic, they're not prescriptive. But each story will stoke in you your own story, because all of us have stories. All of us are waiting to share our stories. And I felt that the only thing I could do was perhaps pen all these stories, no more than about 4 to 5 minute read, because today's attention span is very low. I've got to compete with the WhatsApp of the world, and nobody wants to even look at a WhatsApp which is more than 3 minutes. It was a challenge. I decided I will write a book. It was just a compilation of a lot of these kinds of stories. That's what this book is about. Putting your heart in your work. And more importantly, if you're going to compete in this world, and this world is a lot about running and running and running, can we take a pause and stay true to values, stay true to what is the one that drives us the most in a more holistic way? That's what the book is about.
Absolutely. And you obviously have a lot of experience working with a lot of new talent, old talent, experienced people coming in and out of your company all the time. Having met with so many people, how do you identify individuals who seem to have their heart in the work, as opposed to someone who's maybe coming in for not so much heart in the work? I don't want to say just coming in for experience, but maybe not that inspired.
So again, first of all, great question. I'll tell you a short story. Many years ago, I was asked to get in a person at a senior level, and I got two people from the best of universities and the best of institutes. They were from the top-notch colleges that you can ever think of. And my boss was to interview them, final interview. I knew one of them was going to make it. Unfortunately, both of them did not make it. I went back again to him and I said, is there anything wrong? Did I shortlist the wrong person? They have the right credentials. And he looked at me and he says, they lack passion. So I said, please help me here. What do you mean by passion? He says, well, I asked the final candidate, the person who I thought was going to make it. I asked him the simple question, hey, tell me, what do you do? What are your hobbies? So he says, my hobby is camera. So I'm into photography. He says, okay, what's the best camera in the world? Even if he had said Kodak, I would have said it's okay. He could have said Hasselblad. He could have said Nikon, whole host. He said nothing. Then I said, okay, this is fine. I asked him another question. What is the correlation between the aperture and the focal length? He had no answer to that either. So I was looking at a person who didn't really put a lot of passion, really did not know enough about what is even the hobby that he had. And then I asked him this, what do you use as your camera? He said, I use an aim and shoot. So I felt that this person perhaps was not the right person for you. And then I asked him this question, what did you see in me? Because you said, oh, well, I read books. And then I asked you a question, I don't know whether you remember. I asked you, what is your favorite book? And you said, the book that I'm reading is my favorite. Teams at the Top. Who wrote it? I said, Katzenbach. And what does it say? And then I went into some details. And then he said, just stay there. I never forgot that lesson. Because in subsequent interviews that I've held, even if a person did not get the great university degrees that they had, but if they knew enough about that subject up to that last level, which is even part of their hobby, then that person has a passion. That is a person that we could be looking for. If you play into that kind of work that they do, they will do exceedingly well.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that lovely anecdote with us. You also put a lot of emphasis on emotional intelligence in your book. Have you had a chance to kind of put this into practice, and what have been the results?
Emotional intelligence is possibly one of the most underrated of the kind of competencies that we have. Everybody looks to see, does a person have IQ? But the one that is underrated is emotional intelligence, because the best of CEOs or the best of CMOs, the best of CHROs, you name the top CXOs could fail if they did not have emotional intelligence. Staying with the person in that particular moment of their highs or lows and just being with them and listening to the unheard, the unsaid, and really articulating what is not being heard or said by anybody, I think that is part of emotional intelligence. It makes a big impact. Just staying in the moment, hearing people out, transformational.
You mentioned you like reading, and I can imagine that you probably always wanted to write. When did you know that this was going to be the book you were going to write?
First of all, I'm in complete disbelief that I've even written a book. Complete disbelief. I knew I was going to write a book when I made a promise to somebody. Now, I'm a victim of the promises that I make because I have to keep those promises. So when this person said, when is your book? And I said, well, I'm not too very sure. He says, but you promised. I didn't know whether I promised, but I said, okay, I didn't make a promise, but I'll tell you, by the 31st of December, I will have this book readied, which is what happened. I got that book ready.
Well, obviously anyone can read this book and gain something from it, but did you have someone in mind or target audience? When you were writing, were you imagining someone specifically reading it?
First of all, that's a great question. Yeah. I wanted three things to be done when I was writing this book. This book has got to be simple. That's number one. Second is, it must hold a reader's attention. That's the second one. The third one is, it must appeal to generations, multi-generational. So when a 9-year-old kid was reading a book and had taken a picture of that and posted this on social media, it just warmed my heart, because I was looking at very young people reading this. And then, of course, you find those people who are in their mid-careers or late careers reading it. There is a meaning in each one of the stories for each one of them, because it stokes in them their own stories or some things that they could be learning from it. Maybe even kind of being in synchronicity with the stories. That's all. And I said, I must find some way that it appeals to all the generations. That's got to be.
And it's very popular. I mean, we've seen a really great reception here today. I'm sure you've heard a lot of feedback. Having talked to people about it now, is there anything you would like to go back and wish I could have added this or I could have done this more? Is there any of those feelings or thoughts going on?
Yeah, there's only one thing that I should have advised people to do very early, which is, do not read the book in one shot. It makes no sense if you try to read this like another normal book. Read a couple of stories, maybe a story a day, and take some time over it. Because if you want to say, okay, I've finished this book, don't try to finish a book, because you got to come back to that book again and again. So that's my only thing. Maybe I should have written this as part of my preface, but I failed to do that. I hope I do this in my second.
We'll try to get the message out for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite part of the book or a particular part that you were very, very excited to write and include, or story that is particularly your favorite?
The stories where I tripped, I fell flat on my face, and the stories where I got bruised, my ego came crashing. Those are the kind of stories that really appeal to me, because it got me to feel rather dumb about myself. I learned a lot from that.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from that.
So now this is going to be a little bit of a difficult question, but if people could only take one lesson from your book, like if they could only be left with one thought or feeling, what would you want that to be?
Listen to your heart. The mind plays a part, a significant part. But if you can put heart in your mind and it goes into your work, I think that will be a tremendous work that you would have done through your heart.
And do you have any advice for anyone else who wants to be a writer or, first-time writers?
My advice to first-time writers would be as if it's coming from people who are seasoned writers, but I'll tell you my experience. Start today. Don't wait for those magic moments. I will get this done by so-and-so date. Start today, write a few pages. You will rather tire yourself of the theme. Seek advice of people who are your staunchest critics. They'll help you along the way. Start today.
So my final question to you is, of course, is there any plans to write another book? Or if you could write another book, what would you want it to be about?
Excellent question. I just met a very seasoned author, somebody that I admire, a gentleman called Prakash Iyer. Mm-hmm. So when I met Prakash and I handed over this book, by the way, he purchased the book and he also gave me his book. And the one that he scribbled across, he says, I'm waiting for your next book. And just in that heat of the moment, I told him, Prakash, as I write that second book, know that that book will be dedicated because you inspired me to write that. And what am I going to write about? I don't know. Maybe again, a lot of stories and maybe a lot about slices of work. So I think that's what I'll do.
That would be a great title too, Slices of Work.
Yeah. Maybe a slice of life as well.
Slices of life. Yep. Thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you for our viewers coming and watching it. I hope you had a great day and we hope to see you more.
Fantastic day. I couldn't have asked for anything better. Thank you.
Right.
Looking forward to the
Nice
next.
meeting you.
Thank you.
Bye.